again, and if we all stand and say the
flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Bob, you can't turn that down.
Don't finish reading.
Okay. We have a public comment.
Yes,
First.
here, let me, I feel,
So, the town of Chatham appreciates information received from the public during the public comment portion of each meeting, which often is very helpful in the governance of the town. However, it is sometimes difficult to have a specific or informed response when presented questions in the forum. The town board may attempt to respond during the public comment period, except as to personnel, employer issues, which will not be addressed, but may also defer discussion or response pending a full review of the issues. Additionally, any remarks which may be considered defamatory or stigmatizing are prohibited. If you have a comment, if you would please stand and give us your name.
Bill Emick, I live on Phelps Road, and I just wanted to comment before the presentation that I've read through it very carefully. And speaking as a taxpayer, we got our money's worth and then some. Where I work, we do stuff like this pretty regularly, and this is worth at least 6 or 7 times what we paid for it. So, congratulations, really great work. A number of the points, I had like 89 points. Many of them were just agreeing with some of the comments. So while I think the basis of the draft is good, there's a lot of work to be done, a lot of clarification, some things that I think I agree with but need to be clarified, some things I disagree with. I think some of the, just to be brief, the themes that I didn't see jump out as much as I hoped it would, and perhaps I was just missing it, is the protection of dirt roads, the protection and fostering of the rural and agricultural character of the town. Didn't see as much on agricultural as I thought I would. And the other thing, if I read it correctly, it seemed like special use permits went from 13 to 38, and I was hoping they were going to go the other way, so maybe I misunderstand it, but in general I thought it was good.
My name is Karen Murphy. I also live on Phelps Road. And, what I'd like to underscore is what was in the report, which is the importance of public participation. It's not cumbersome. It actually makes it better when the people are able to participate. And because the ZIP worked without any public participation for 5 years, and continued to work without any public participation, even after the public asked to be part of it in 2014 and 2015, I think it's really, really critical. And I think it would be helpful, at the direction of our consultant, to have a committee that receives information, distributes information, is able to assist in the analysis of the information. And I think it will actually speed the process, as Board Member Haber, has emphasized, that we want to get this done, and we want to get it done comprehensively, but also correctly, and we want to do it with the public involvement. And so I'd like to volunteer, just so that the board knows that I have a planning degree from University of California, Berkeley, so I have some ability to assist, from an academic and somewhat of a practical perspective, and I'm happy to provide my time to do that. And I really, again, would like to say it was a brilliant job.
Are we commenting on the report before the presentation?
I'm sorry?
Are we?
Whatever.
Whatever?
Beforehand.
Okay. Yeah, I haven't thought this through very well. So I'm Sue Seneca on Bushnell Road, and I echo what everyone else has said about your report. It was wonderful and thorough, and fully what we wanted. Your first suggestion is to bring the public together to see if they still have the same priorities and what their concerns may be now that may be different from when the plan was originally done. And I just want to caution us against, and as a public participation professor, researcher, practitioner, international consultant who does this all the time, I just want to caution us to think that through, if that's what the board wants to do, to think it through. Because you don't ask for people to assess a car before you have turned it on and taken it for a test drive. So the review is to test the efficacy of the plan, and we haven't tested that yet. So there really is nothing yet to review. The original goal was to put the plan out, see how it runs, and then at the 5-year mark, come back and see, bring the public together and see if we're still on track with everyone's desired future, or if they're, what's going right and what needs to be tweaked. I don't know that we're at that point. I think we ought to put all our effort into celebrating that we're to this point. Invite the public to, again, revisit what they, by the hundreds, helped put together and let it be implemented, rather than asking them to go back 5 or 6 years and ask them if this is still what they want or if they have other concerns.
Did you have something?
Yeah, Rick Waterways. I live in the hamlet of North Chatham. I just want to commend Nan on a really fabulous job with her report, which I read in conjunction with the implementation plan as well. So I have concerns, and I'm looking forward to seeing how the committee, the ZIC committee, or that's redundant, the zoning implementation committee and the town board take on, particularly around hamlets. And as any of you who read Nan's report know, for reasons that I'm unaware and couldn't discern from the minutes posted on the website, they seem to have taken a pass on dealing with a lot of the issues around hamlets that were called for in the master planning process. And I'd like to know either if we're going to take that on, if it's going to continue to be a pass, or if we're going to take it on, what the timeline is in the process for taking that on going forward. Thanks.
I'd also like to compliment Nan on her review, which is very professional, very thorough. It doesn't surprise me in the least, having worked with Nan on the original comp plan, and also, as you know, I sit on the Environmental Management Council for the county, and we invited Nan because of her reputation and because she has worked with so many communities in our area to come and talk to us at one of our meetings about the issues that she has seen arise over and over again in the planning process for rural communities like ours. And she came in and did the top 10 issues for rural communities from no notes from the back of her hand like a pro. It was really amazing. She has an extraordinary depth of experience and knowledge in working with communities like ours. I'd just like to go back in the history long ago, because I think there's something for us to learn from what has happened with the comp plan. When the comp plan was adopted, had we, as several community members recommended, formed an implementation committee and asked Nan to do an initial draft of the changes to our law and the additions to our laws that were needed to implement the plan, and then had a legal review done of that and had Nan work with the committee through all of that, we could have implemented the comp plan in 6 months. Instead, here we are 7 years later, and we still don't have a completely implemented plan. We haven't implemented anything. We have some recommendations which are partial, not complete. And I think we really need to make sure that, unlike the original ZIC, which I know was appointed by a prior administration, not this board, but that ZIC had no overlap with the original comp plan planning committee, or almost no overlap, and had no professional help. It was really the blind leading the blind for years. And then Henry Schwartz came in to do a very difficult job, and is to be commended for stepping forward and taking responsibility for it when nobody else really wanted to. But again, without any institutional memory and without any adequate professional help. So what we have gotten is a great effort, but no cigar. And I would like to recommend once again, as many of us did 7 years ago, that we take advantage of Nan's professional help in filling in the parts of the plan that have not been implemented in what the ZIC has done. And that we do that quickly, because it's a very long time. I agree with Sue. I think we need to work with this plan. I think I agree with Karen. We need public participation, and eventually we need to review the plan again. But I don't think that should be our top priority at the minute. At the moment, we have to have a plan and see it work a little bit. And I think there are some holes, some things that were not in the original plan that in the passage of time we might want to consider, things like sustainability, things like climate change adaptation and remediation, pipelines, zoning for renewable energy projects, things that we are going to have to face eventually. And maybe separately we want to work on the things that are going to have to be added, but I think that should not hold us back from implementing what we did so well 7 years ago.
Thank you.
Van Calhoun, Bushnell Road, Chatham. I ended up being the chairman of the steering committee of the final document that was presented to the town board. I agree totally with what Rick has said and Deidre has said and Sue has said. I want to point out that this was a most tremendous creative effort by this town, including hundreds and hundreds of people, over 400 people. It was an extremely progressive, futuristic document, almost, and it was based on the premise of Hamlet-style zoning, which is kind of a term we created here. And the Hamlet-style zoning was set up so that we didn't whitewash everything with the same general laws, that each hamlet had its particular characteristics that wanted to be honored and expanded upon, and it has the detail and the flexibility to be able to do that. So this is not a document that can be cherry-picked out of certain things and not other things. It is a comprehensive document. As that, we should be very, very proud of it. And again, if we go back to where we were 6 or 7 years ago, I think we'll go to great places. Thank you.
Thank you.
Follow-up, Rick Werweis again. I just want to second what Deidre said about the idea of hiring Nan to fill in that she's provided this town for 15 years on this now. And ask Nan to bring that forward for this board and for the community to take a look at. And I also want to second what Van said about the comprehensive plan has to be comprehensively enacted. It can't be cherry-picked. The town will open itself up to Article 78. I might even be one of the ones filing if the town tries to cherry-pick its way through the comprehensive plan.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Jeff?
Hi, Jeff Murdoch on Reed Road in Chatham. I agree with everything that's been said so far. I would just like to reiterate, I think it's important that the town takes the time to really focus on all of these issues. And I mean, I hear somebody here say, we gotta get this done. Yes, but with interested parties' input, I think that people are interested, and you need to take the time to listen to them and account for their concerns. And obviously, you know, not everybody gets what they want out of this, but that's democracy in action. So, you know, compromises, I'm not saying cherry picking, but compromises amongst the parties who differ in opinion is what would be the net result. My concern is the preservation of the agricultural heritage of the area and the open land. And I'm not certain, I'm not as familiar with the comprehensive plan but I believe the hamlet-style development does preserve open land. I'm not certain of that, but if that would be my goal, to see support for farmers, agriculture, anything agricultural, I think, is extremely important to this community. It's kind of the basis of the character, the fundamentals of the land. Leaving a lot of open land with more developed land in smaller areas. I think that's what they're talking about in the hamlet style. So I think that's really important. The dirt roads, I believe, are also very important, just to the overall character. And you know, I point to a town where I grew up, and I mentioned this a while ago, that in Great Barrington, Mass., which was a wonderful little town 40 years ago. It's an interesting town now, but it's completely different. When I was a kid, Great Barrington and Sheffield was nothing but cows. Cows, cows, cows. And, you know, that industry has changed, but so has Great Barrington. And Great Barrington is now a suburb. And it breaks my heart to see that happen. It was a really special place. It's now touted as a wonderful place. It's the New Hamptons of that region. I would advise that you consider, do you want to be the next Hamptons? It's very possible here, at this location. It's a beautiful place, Chatham. And I drive around in the Berkshires now, and I look at places when I was a kid where I would drive by and say, wow, this, you know, that's a terrible spot. That's an ugly spot. There's houses in all of these places now. It is suburbia, and it is, I mean, soon it will be Westchester. It will behave and look and smell and taste just like Westchester. I pose the question to you all, do you want that? And if you don't, if you'd like to have some control, if that's not what this is about, you need to figure out in this go-round how to deal with it. Because that's what's coming. That's the next thing on the pike. You're a straight shot, 2 hours to Manhattan. And it's very real, and it will happen. And you have something really, really special here. Chatham is a really special place. And I mean, I have to live and work in Great Barrington. It's not where I choose to be anymore. You know, the shops are too glitzy. There's just way too many people. There's a traffic jam in town. Do you want 5 traffic lights in Chatham? In Chatham? Not Old Chatham, in Chatham. I just posed that question, and I think now is the time to deal with that. And you've got to stop, think about it, talk about it. There you go.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I emailed you a letter, did you get it?
The board received, yes.
Okay, are you gonna read that this evening? My problem is, I would read it, but my phone is about to die and I can't read it.
Yeah, we're gonna go through them.
Oh, so I don't have anything to say.
Ma'am, if you just bear with us, we've got a few letters to read, and what I'd like to do is have everyone read a letter. I can't read them all.
That's a short one.
I'm going to pick the one with the big type. We've received a number of email letters from different residents, and this one is from Melissa Pollock. Dear Town Board, I write in support of hiring of community planning and environmental associates to complete the implementation of our inadequate and outdated zoning. The implementation process has dragged on far too long. It should never have been taken, never have taken all of the hands of, out of the hands of the professional in the first place. I applaud this board for recognizing that to get a job of this magnitude done right requires professional help. I've read Ms. Stolzenberg's summary of the ZIC document. The fact that she found enough deficiencies to fill 30 pages is flabbergasting. Frankly, it's insulting. Over 200 residents worked diligently under her supervision to draft our comprehensive plan. To have that work reduced to haphazard, incomplete implementation would be tragic. Document drafted by the ZIC has major flaws and omissions, and as such, does not protect the desires and needs of the town as stated in the comprehensive plan. I won't get into specifics, lest my letter run on to the same length as Ms. Stolzenberg's summary. She has ably and clearly pointed out all the specific strategies and zoning tools that we citizens wanted and specified in the comp plan, but that do not appear in the ZIC document. We were thorough and explicit in our recommendations and very specific in our language regarding the strategies and tools we wanted adopted in our zoning. The ZIC has omitted so much of this as to render the comp plan toothless and unfocused. This process has taken so long that we are 2 years overdue for the 5-year comp plan review. Please heed Ms. Stolzenberg's advice and permit her to conduct a public review so that issues that have emerged in the last 7 years can be included. I urge you on behalf of your constituents to please encourage swift preparation of zoning language by community planning and environmental associates. Chatham needs zoning laws that spell out a clear, easy to understand process that is reflective of the comprehensive plan. Yours truly, Melissa Powell.
I have a letter from Linda Ziskind. Subject is concerns, comments regarding ZIC recommendations in Nan Stolzenberg's report. It was sent to all the board members. Dear Chatham Town board members, I'm writing because unfortunately I'm unable to attend tonight's meeting to discuss Nan Stolzenberg's report on the ZIC's zoning recommendations. I'm very pleased that the board hired Nan to review the ZIC's recommendations report, as I had read the ZIC's document when it was released, and I was quite dismayed that after 5 years of effort it was somewhat disorganized, incomplete, and in many instances did not reflect the objectives of the approved and enacted comprehensive plan. I don't believe that disappointing quality of the document is the ZIC's fault. No one on the ZIC was a planning or land use expert, and as good intentioned but inexpert lay people, they did the best they could. However, it was a costly mistake to assume this could be accomplished by non-professionals. The fact that it stretched out for 5 years without the town's leader correcting the problem is a disgrace. As we all know, the current zoning laws are not only outdated and don't reflect the realities of Chatham today, there were also careless loopholes created by a lack of clarity and detail in many of the laws. For example, one of the permitted special uses for the RL2 district is summer camps and retreats. As now know, for Adam Sloan, this was a loophole big enough to drive a truck or for for-profit year-round corporate retreat through.
because the ZBA never followed up with him on their request to see his 501c3 application, and because Slow repeatedly lied when they asked what he intended to do with the property during the 10 months that camp wasn't in session, and the ZBA granted the special use permit for summer camps, Sloan would have been within his right to open for profit corporate retreat, which would have had all of the negative environmental outcomes that both the citizens of Chatham and the sadly unwitting ZBA had tired to prevent. So imagine how disturbed I was to find that not only does the ZIC's recommendations include this exact vaguely written law, they've actually added to the number of special uses for RL2, a zone that should be protected rather than exploited and overdeveloped. Vaguely written law and legal expectations of the law that are incompatible with geography of a zone is not only in direct conflict with the intent of the comprehensive plan, it is an insult to the people who put their time and energy into writing the plan, people who approve the plan, and the people who will in the future be forced to spend time and money defending comp plan and our land, not to mention the waste of time and expense to town government. I'd also like to mention that as articulate and well rationalized that Nan's report is, it did neglect to mention a specific feature in Chatham's environment, dirt roads. I bring this up because given that the town has enacted a more than 12-month moratorium on special use permits for projects on dirt roads, I feel that the topic is important enough to warrant specific protection laws in our zoning code. As the moratorium acknowledges, our dirt roads are fragile, but they are also an important feature of the beauty of Chatham's rural environment. Over the years, many of them have been paved, but the ones that remain are loved not only by most residents, but the town's guests and visitors. But apologies to Joe Rickert, whose workload is increased by the roads, but maintains them beautifully. I urge the board to consider including specific protection for the special feature of our town.
Okay, this one is from Heather Euler. Dear Town Supervisor Lowell and fellow town board members, my name is Heather Euler and I reside at 263 Thomas Road in Old Chatham. My home is located within the New York State Agricultural District number 10. I greatly appreciate the work and efforts of the ZIC for the review of the comprehensive plan, but I noted a critical oversight. The ZIC failed to acknowledge the blanket protections granted to areas located within New York State designated agricultural districts. These districts have been designated by the state of New York in order to preserve and protect open spaces and farmland. It is the express opinion of Agriculture and Markets that these state designated districts should be preserved for agricultural and low-impact residential uses only. In that regard, Agriculture and Markets has created standards in order to ensure that special use permits of any kind are strictly limited, if not prohibited altogether, within a designated agricultural district. And instead, the applicant would be required to meet a higher burden of proof for that of a variance. The following standards were given to me by Dr. Bob Summers, manager of the Agricultural Protection Unit for New York State. These are the standards that Agriculture and Markets follow when reviewing uses other than those permitted as of right, for example, farms, within an agricultural district. 1, effect on neighborhood character. 2, whether there is an alternative solution that would not require a variance. 3, how substantial the request is. 4, what the effect of granting the variance will have on the environment. And 5, whether the difficulty necessitating the area variance is self-created. The applicant must prove beyond a shadow of a doubt that not just some but all 5 standards are met, thereby ensuring that the proposed use will not have a negative impact on the lands within an agricultural district and the farms that currently operate within them. In a farm-friendly community like Chatham, protecting these districts, among others, from inappropriate uses and development should be a first and foremost priority for the town in its implementation of the comprehensive plan. In order to truly protect the character, safety, and longevity of our rural community, We must focus our efforts on preserving farming together with our signature dirt roads by managing future growth that is both compatible in use as well as density. Thank you for your attention to this matter. Kind regards, Heather Euler. And she attached some letters from Agriculture and Markets. I won't read them.
This next one is from Randy Walker, who lives at 3769 State Route 66 in Chatham Center. Dear Town Board, thank you for the opportunity to read Nan Stolzenberg's review of the town's proposed zoning based on the work developed by the ZIC. I am unable to attend tonight's meeting and am therefore submitting this letter. I sincerely hope the board will follow Nan's recommendations of gathering community input, updating the comprehensive plan, and revising the proposed zoning. As an active member of the comprehensive plans committees, I am aware of the desires and concerns expressed by the community during the development of the plan. I know community members express concern about retaining the unique and prideful characteristics of our hamlets. Based on Nan's memo, it appears that the proposed zoning does not address key elements such as density, dimensions, hamlet standards, and commercial/design standards. The new zoning should include more stringent standards for hamlets. Another area of concern relates to new issues facing our town, such as new energy resources. Many towns face the burden of fighting proposed fossil fuel pipelines and high voltage electrical transmission lines. Our new comprehensive plan and town regulations should be updated and incorporate provisions to protect our rural character and valuable town resources such as water, with consideration of the detrimental effects of these new energy highway mechanisms. I am a big supporter of deriving energy from renewable resources, but over the past decade, evidence suggests harmful human health effects from living in close proximity to wind turbines and outdoor wood furnaces. I would like to see the plan updated to require appropriate setbacks and greater restrictions in the population dense areas of the hamlets and village. I have provided these few examples to illustrate the importance of updating our plan and developing new town zoning. If you have any questions or would like further input, please contact me. Sincerely, Randy Walker.
Mr. Murdoch, I got lucky to draw your letter. You've already spoken at length about everything that's here, and then some in your letter, so it'd just really be repeating what you already said. So.
There's no sense in reading.
Okay.
Nicely done, Henry.
Thank you for being here.
Well, thank you all for reading the letters. So, without any further ado, Nan?
All right, great. Well, I feel kind of, after listening to all your comments, that maybe what I put together tonight might be somewhat of a repetition, because at least many of you have read the report. What I had intended to do was a summary, you know, trying to get everyone up to speed in case you didn't have a chance to read it. So it's not very long. It might be a good place just to get everybody on the same page. So I'll go through it, even if it's a repeat for, obviously some of you have clearly understood what was the heart of the memo. But if you'll indulge me, I think there might be some points too that will be discussion points for when we're done. And I'm going to just stand off to the side here because I don't want my backs to anyone. So I just wanted to start off with, so everyone understood what my charge from the town board was and how I looked at this project was really narrow in the sense that it was to look at the proposed update and how well it was consistent with the comprehensive plan. It was really not to look at the reasons that the ZIC had for including or not including or writing something the way it was written or not. So it was, I looked at it as very focused in helping to say, here's what the plan said, here's what the zoning says, and how consistent are they. So it was really to understand, my purpose in looking at this project was to
understand the plan strategies and actions, identify which of those strategies were addressed or not addressed in the zoning, and to then go beyond whether it was in there or not in there, but how consistent and how far does the zoning go to address that particular strategy. And that's where I think there's a lot of discussion that we could have on the level of detail that the zoning went to. A lot of the concepts that were in the plan are actually could be found in the document, but not to the level that the comprehensive plan called for. And one of the things when I review a zoning law, I can't help myself but to look at how it's put together, how it reads, how easy it is to find things in it, how effective the administration of that zoning would be. So even though you didn't specifically say to me, review the effectiveness of how we would administer this law, it's just part of reviewing a law. You can't have an effective zoning law unless the people who use the law, both on the planning board, the ZBA, and the landowners understand what it's really trying to say. So that was just part of how I saw the charge from the town board. So what I did was I started off, and I really, I had no preconceived notions of what the ZIC document, I had no input or communication with them, so I really started with a blank slate. I went through and reviewed the comprehensive plan, and I want to remind everyone that the comprehensive plan includes the maps and the appendices that were adopted along with it. It's not just the main body of the plan. Those appendices and the maps are a very important part, especially the way you wrote your comprehensive plan. The appendix was very detailed in what it suggested for instance, the use table. I think that was Appendix E or F. Had a lot of those details already worked out. So we just needed to kind of make sure everyone is reading the whole plan and not just the first part that has the strategies. So the first thing I did was go back through the plan, and as you can see, for those of you who printed it off or looked at it online, I made a chart that listed all of the things that were zoning or land use related items from the comprehensive plan. It was just a laundry list of things that the plan said, and what you'll see in that first column is a shorthand, because I didn't want to repeat the whole plan in that table, but just to give us an idea of what those were. And I put it in the form of a chart in hopes that regardless of where you go from here, whether it's me or someone else or a committee, I don't know. And I appreciate your vote of confidence in my work. I really do appreciate that very much. But you know, as a consultant, I know you never know what's going to happen. So I hope the chart will serve as a checklist for whoever works with the town to get the zoning up to shape. The next thing that I did was read the zoning, and I've read it multiple times, and it was very important for me to read it through several times. The first time through gave me one impression, and then the second and third and fourth times through I found other things. And the complication of a zoning law is the pieces work together. And it's hard because you can't read a zoning law like a novel. You start on page 1 and go to page 100. But all of the pieces do work together. And so first read, you read something in the first article only to find something at the very end that relates back to the first that may be inconsistent or needing tweaking. So it took a bit of time to really go through and have a thorough understanding of what all of the things were and how they work together. So I tried to go through in the multiple reads to cross-check with the chart that I had done that came from the comprehensive plan, and literally went back and forth until I could find them or not find them. And I will fully admit there may be some things in there that I checked off as no, not in there, that may be in there somehow, because it was, you know, 100 or whatever pages it was of looking. So there may be some things that I missed. But I tried to do that cross-check
These are my opinions, and I try to be, when I do zoning work, I look at it with what does the words on the page say? Because that's all we have to go with. If the ZIC meant something, but it didn't get transferred to the words on the page, then the meaning that they had hoped, or even the original zoning, that gets lost in the translation. So I really look, what are the section, what do the words say on the piece of paper, and does it say what the plan meant it to say, or is it open for interpretation? So you'll see in the chart the other columns where I added things like generally met or partially met for those reasons. So there was a process to the review that I went through, and I tried to be thorough in what those findings were. So there's a couple themes that I think come out, and I think if we could summarize the whole thing, my concerns lie not necessarily with what is there, but with what is not there. And I think there are some issues and some tweaks and some changes that need to be made based on what is there, but more attention needs to be paid to what is not there in relation to the plan. One of the things that I should have started this first slide off with enhancements in the update is the purpose statements. I can't stress enough the importance of the purpose statements in a zoning law. Whenever there's any question about what you're trying to accomplish when you have land use regulations, it comes down to why are you regulating land? Why you're regulating land is outlined in the purpose statements of the zoning law. It is the first thing that a court will look at. Why are you doing this? And is there a connection between what you as a community are trying to accomplish and that regulation? So the purpose statements, the ZIC did include and capture the need to recognize the importance of rural character. I'm not quite sure I agree with the wording they used, but there is some recognition in the purpose statements of some of the spirit that came out of the comprehensive plan. So I should have added that to the slides, is that they did include that in the update. The plan, as you all know, is very focused on rural and historic character, environmental protection, and maintaining the values of the community that were identified in the plan. As I came to understand that if you look at implementation of a comprehensive plan on a scale, from 0, it's not implemented, to 10, everything that was in the plan is implemented. The update brings us partway up that scale. Rural and historic character, environmental protection, those big ticket items that were mentioned in the plan are enhanced in the updated version. It's not like they ignored rural character or historic character and environmental protection. It's the level of detail those topics were addressed as. The Environmental Protection Overlay District, or the EPOD, is an example where they added in a steep slope overlay and a scenic and ridgeline protection overlay. So those topics were definitely addressed. The site plan review section and the special use section had enhancements where those terms were brought in and made part of kind of the culture of those review processes. Again, not, I think, in necessarily the detail that the plan called for, but they are more a part of the zoning with the update than they were the current zoning that's on the books. So I just want to be clear that I did feel that this, in that way, if you read my memo and I said that I felt the spirit of the comprehensive plan was incorporated in the update, it's because those terms the zoning, the updated zoning recognizes at least rural character, historic character, and environmental protection, where the one you have on the books now does not do that very well at all. So again, it's moved the needle up in the scale. It is more farm-oriented. There are many definitions that were added which were good to see related to agriculture, and the terms that we often, and we now need to include in a zoning law for agriculture, because agriculture is a lot more than it used to be. There's all sorts of ag uses that old zoning laws don't address at all. The old zoning laws don't address ag tourism, you-pick operations. It doesn't address farms that have multiple businesses on the farm. You grow, like, I don't know if there's any wineries or vineyards in Chatham, but you know, that's a good example. You grow grapes, you make wine, you sell wine. You know, you could have, those are 3 separate businesses that could be on any one farm. So zoning laws have to reflect now all the variety and the diversity of agriculture that we have these days. So the definitions are greatly improved in that respect. There is a section in there that is farm-oriented that talks about guidelines for siting of structures to protect farmland, and that was a good thing to see. It does offer, not in the kind of detail it needs, I'll get to that, but it does offer and recognize that the plan talked about a modified site plan review, which I forget which the letter was. One of the letters talked about the need to not over-regulate agriculture in an ag district, and that's true. And how we do that is by setting up this modified site plan review process for certain uses that would impact, that are ag-related, that we would want to have some part of review on. As I mentioned, it does have a new site plan section. It's greatly enhanced the special use section from a process point of view. Those are all good improvements. The comprehensive plan called for a density bonus. That has been included. A density bonus is basically a you do something for us, we'll do something for you kind of procedure. So the zoning sets up, if you do X, Y, or Z and give the town these amenities, in return, we will give you extra density as an incentive to provide those amenities. They're often used for open space protection, providing senior citizen housing, affordable housing. There's a whole variety of things that density bonuses are offered for, and that section was well done and included in as per the plan. Another thing that the enhancement was the zoning has a variety of standards now for certain uses that are have a character that have the need for some sort of special standard relating to it. And I'd have to look up, there was a whole list of them that were added. That was a good enhancement to provide the planning board and the applicants to know what the expectations of the community are. If you go through that chart and you add in all of the things that I had, yeses, partial, or general, somehow they were addressed. There are about half of the things from the comprehensive plan that were addressed in some way in the update. So, you know, I look at that as a positive. Again, it's maybe not all the way, but it's moving us closer to where we wanted to be as per the plan. So the things that were not in the update, and I think it took a while for me to kind of incorporate and figure it all out, but, and I purposefully did not read the minutes of the ZIC committee. I did talk to Tal a couple times. He offered to send me the minutes, but the reasons why they included or didn't include something was really not the point. So I don't know, and I think that if there are some issues with some of these things that were not included, they may have reasons why they didn't include it. I don't know, and for my purpose of reviewing whether this was consistent with the comprehensive plan, that wasn't important, and that wasn't the charge that I was given. Some of the bigger ticket items that were not included, transfer of development rights. The transfer of development rights program is where you allow development that could be taking place over here to be moved over here. So there's communities that are doing transfer of development rights, typically identify locations in the rural area that are farmed to be preserved, and permanent easements are placed on those areas, and the development is picked up and moved to a place that's more appropriate to have that density. That was a major concept in the comprehensive plan that was not included. My opinion was that most of the density, lot size, setback, and those kind of bulk standards were not addressed. The plan really was focused on de-emphasizing minimum lot sizes, because what minimum lot sizes do is force everybody to have a standard lot, and subdivisions tend to then get designed in whatever the acreage is. And that is not a typical traditional rural countryside kind of pattern. So the plan established a method that we like to encourage in rural areas, which is really using a true density measurement. The lot size is de-emphasized to be really only important to get water and sewer, or water and septic system in there. Beyond that, it's an old-fashioned way of controlling density. It was before we had newer techniques. It was like make everyone have a 5-acre lot or a 3-acre lot to spread everybody out, and that was what it was done. But we have found that when we do minimum lot size planning in rural areas, you simply get those lots spread out across the countryside, and that in the end starts looking like a suburb. So the plan addressed those. The other concept that was not included is average lot size, which is connected to density. So let's use an example. If you are in a zoning district, you have a 100-acre lot, and the density is 3 dwellings per acre for, let's do, because my math is bad, let's call it a 90-acre parcel. You would get 30, you would be able to have 30 dwellings in there somewhere. If it was a 3-acre minimum lot size, each one of those 30 lots would have 3 acres, and you'd use the whole parcel. An average lot size system says we're going to have a 3-acre density. But those lot sizes can be down to a ½ an acre if the soils are good enough to have water and septic. So you could have 30 1-acre lots and leave the whole rest of the parcel open. The average lot size coupled with density, in my opinion, is one of the most important fundamental planning concepts that was in the plan, because it gives you the ability to, I look at it as you have your cake and eat it too. The landowner gets the density, they can develop their lot, but at the same time has a lot more flexibility to create open space, create smaller, more affordable lots. There's a whole raft of benefits for doing it that way. As Rick talked about, the plan repeatedly talked about the uniqueness of each hamlet, the need to treat each hamlet differently, the notion that the hamlets should be developed as a hamlet with hamlet-style density, hamlet-style lots, hamlet-style traditional neighborhoods, and in my opinion, those weren't addressed. Those were big ticket items that were not addressed. The other one was, throughout the plan, talks about commercial design standards. Commercial design standards are, depending on the community, sometimes they're very explicit, sometimes they're broad, but give enough direction so that the commercial development that comes in has design and placement on the lot consistent with the pattern that we see and that's desired in the community. The plan tied small business development to commercial design standards. A really important key point, that without the design standards, then the commercial development could look like anything. And it was addressed, this is where there's an example of how the update addressed that in a general way. It made a general statement in the site plan review process that the new development should be consistent with the rural and historic character. Great statement, absolutely right. It's the right philosophy, but what does that mean? And how do you measure it? And what are the standards? You know, so that's where those commercial design standards are things that would give the applicant and the planning board and everyone else to know what the expectations are of the community. And I've done this a lot, and I know most places I go, people will say, oh, a 100-page zoning law, that's awful, we're regulating us out the wazoo, we don't want that much regulation. But then you go to a community that has a 20-page zoning law that is full of generalities and full of vagueness, and who has the most problems? It's the communities with the short, vague law, because no one really knows what was meant. No one knows how to interpret it. And they interpret it often different for one group and another group. So it's the laws that are laid out that have the details that typically get you the development that you had hoped for. And I think that's really the undercurrent of what I concluded was that the ZIC's attitude was more general, flexible, leave it up to the planning board on a case-by-case basis to make those decisions. Whereas the comprehensive plan was much more proscriptive in what it was looking for. I think the comprehensive plan laid out a very specific set of expectations up front. So I think there was a real, I'm reading between the lines, but that's what I see as the real difference between the update and the plan comes from that. The traditional neighborhood standards the comprehensive plan talks about, those are standards for new, usually residential, but sometimes commercial, and especially large subdivisions, so that you get a traditional looking development and not a suburban style subdivision. Those weren't addressed. The plan talks a lot about the need for appropriate mixed uses, letting people adaptive reuse things in a consistent way. And while those things aren't prohibited in the zoning, there's nothing in there that says you can't have a mixed use building. But it doesn't, again, it doesn't give you the hows, the whens, and the wheres, and what are the expectations for mixed use buildings. The one thing that was, I think, really needs to go back in is your current zoning. One of the things that's good in your current zoning is that it has a purpose statement for each zoning district. So when you're reading along, you can say, oh, this district is designed to accomplish X for the community. Going back to the importance of the purpose statements, that's a really good thing to have. So the comprehensive plan actually wrote the purpose statements. Those purpose statements for each of the recommended districts is in the comprehensive plan. So those weren't in the update. And not only were they not in the update, but the existing definitions that are there now were removed. And I'm not quite sure why, and I don't really, again, that wasn't my role to second guess why. I'm just saying that that was really not consistent with the comprehensive plan. Those purpose statements need to be in there, because when all else fails, you go back to the purpose statement and say, does this decision meet this purpose statement? So they're very, very important. I want to mention too that the comprehensive plan offered 2 concept maps for the zoning. The set one that showed 2 additional hamlets that were perceived as good locations for more traditional development. And those two proposed hamlets were not included in the zoning map. Now that I did talk to Tal about, and his answer was that they felt that those locations were not the right place to handle for density for water and septic rules, or have adequate resources for those. You know, and I would have to go back to our notes. I think that when we looked at those things in the Comprehensive Plan Committee, when we identified those potential hamlets, that's something that we could work through. But I just wanted to let everyone know that that was a big change in the zoning map. So as I talked about that, I think that there's a real philosophical difference between the direction that the ZIC had versus the comprehensive plan. And as I said, the plan established a more detailed proscriptive approach with detailed development standards. I think the plan hoped that it would lay out the performance expectations of the community so that by the time something got to the planning board, everybody knew what the rules were, everybody knows what the expectations were, and in that case, if you meet those rules, you get a yes. I mean, that's really the way it should work. You know what the rules are, you play by the rules, you get a yes. If you don't know what the rules are, then halfway through the planning process, someone says, oh, I think you should have a 50-foot buffer and 50 more trees, and that's what takes so long. So I really feel strongly that the plan set you on a more detailed direction with measurable criteria and measurable standards. The one exception is the EPODs that were offered in the update, the scenic and ridgeline overlay and the steep slope overlay were very detailed, and perhaps on the steep slope one, perhaps too detailed, and it actually repeats some of the exact standards that come from New York state law. So there are ways of writing it so that it's not overwhelming and you can refer to the state rules without repeating every single one. So I think the steep slope overlay confused me, and I wrote extensively about it in my memo. It's called a steep slope overlay. In the plan, the map that went along with that showed that it was applying only to those parts of the town that had steep slopes, which I think were 15, it was either 15 or 20% steep slope. The way the zoning, the update is written, however, they had applicability to floodplain areas and wetlands and other areas that were not in the steep slope overlays. So that's one area where I'm confused. It could be that they meant it to be just for steep slopes, or they could have meant it that those are really watershed rules and regulations for stormwater control that would be applied everywhere in town, which is not a bad idea, but it's not a steep slope overlay. So we have to bring those together and make sure we understand the applicability of what we wanted to accomplish there. The ridgeline, scenic ridgeline one, I think there's some in general, I think it's a great starting place, and I think that it's got some really good detail. There was some updating to the map that was done. I don't know why the map was updated based on what was on the comprehensive plan, but if you look at the ridgeline map in the comprehensive plan and the ridgeline map that came out of the committee update, there is a difference in what was being considered to be scenic in a ridgeline. So I guess there's no sense in going over again that the zoning kind of continues with what I would consider more flexible, less proscribed, maybe more vague generalities, dealing with the concepts in a more general way. I gave the example of 180-22, which is where we mentioned the modified site plan review. It includes the modified site plan review. It has a sentence in there that says that for ag buildings that would not be required to go through the full-blown site plan review process, but would follow the, in accordance with the New York State Ag and Markets Guideline. I understood what that meant because I work with that. I don't know if anyone else or anyone on the planning board would know what that means. Which guideline? There's 15 different guidelines from Ag and Markets. So which one it would be, I don't know. What process to follow, it's not outlined. So again, good policy, consistent with the comprehensive plan, but no details on what it is, how it would be administered, what the process would be, and who would be required to do that. So those are the details that I felt were missing in an awful lot of places. So as I said, I think some sections were good. The density bonus, some of the siting guidelines for residences in relationship to farmland, the site plan procedures, the density, so the first one, those were all, I thought, good with some tweaks, but mostly a good place to start. But that some of those other areas that the plan spent a lot, pages and pages of discussion on how they were important, what to do, how to address them, were not addressed. Looking at the format and the readability, I understand that it's a draft, but it was very hard to read because it's not indented right so that you know which line follows which section. It was just hard to read. Just typos, format things, little things that every zoning law has to fix, but they need to be fixed. There were a few sections that I felt were out of order and that they, to help flow and help people find things, could be brought into a different section of the zoning. Pick them up from the end and move them into another section so that they're in the right place. There were a few duplications. Some sections were repeated. Some definitions were repeated, and that needs to be cleaned up. So those were just like cleanup kind of things. The one thing is that they really did a good job. There's a lot more definitions. Definitions are really important, but what we especially need to do is every use that is allowed by a special use, of which there are many, maybe you don't want all of them, but of which there are, each one of those should have its own definition. That's like a cardinal rule so that everybody knows, okay, I have to get a special use for a convenience store. What is a convenience store? Or I have to get a special use permit for a whatever. That needs to be defined. So we have to go back, and everything that you allow as a special use, you have to have a definition for. That will save a lot of grief and a lot of confusion when everybody clearly knows what you're talking about. So definitions are really important. As someone mentioned here, the plan really sought more public input, not just the required public hearing with the 5-day legal notice and all of that. It really was looking to have the public more involved early on in the process. Not to stop, my opinion was it wasn't to stop projects, but it's to identify issues early in the process so they can be addressed early before someone has gone out and spent a lot of money on surveys and engineering. Find out what the issues are that are going to be addressed, that need to be addressed in the planning board, and get them out on the table early. That just makes good sense for the community to have input, and it actually makes good sense for the applicant because they'll get through the process sooner. The earlier we have all of those issues out on the table, the better we all will be. And that really wasn't written in, but it could be written into like the sketch phase or early in the process. The other thing was that your roles for the planning board and the ZBA are very complex. In my memo, I listed that some things the planning board does, some things the ZBA does, but some of the things that the ZBA does, the planning board can go back and change if the project changes. It's very convoluted, it's not efficient for the applicant, it's certainly not efficient for the town. And the ZBA currently has the authority to issue the special use permit. The problem, that's old school. When zoning first came about, ZBAs were the only group that had the authority to issue a special use permit. That was changed in New York State to give that authority to the planning board. And so when you keep the special use approval authority with your ZBA, then what you've done is you set up a situation where your ZBA reviews and approves a project. Then it goes to the planning board to have site plan review of the same project. Then if there's an issue and for whatever reason the permit gets denied, the ZBA goes back to issue a variance or asks to issue a variance on the very same project it already approved. It's very complex and really not recommended. My strong recommendation is that you remove the special use permit authority from the ZBA. You give it to the planning board. You let the planning board do site plan review and special use permits at the same time concurrently, because they do different things. And you leave the ZBA to its role as issuing variances and interpretations and appeals. So then you have a true appellate kind of situation that it should be. The other thing that I have a real issue with is the ZBA section. It should not vary far at all from New York State 267A and B, which are the state authorizing law for zoning boards of appeals. The safest thing for you as a town is to follow the state procedures, word for word. When I write a zoning law, it's literally cut and paste. That's the safest way, that's the procedure, that's what you're authorized to do, and that's what your ZBA section, in my opinion, should do. There's no reason to vary any of that. And you don't have those things outlined at all. There's many sections that aren't even in your ZBA section. That is something easy and very straightforward to fix. And the other thing that I noticed, which it may be somewhere else in your code, I looked through it and couldn't find it, but if it is truly missing, it's a real issue. And that is there's no amendment section. So the amendment section of a zoning law gives you the instructions on how you as a community and as a board amend the zoning law. So that's it's easy to fix. It's really easy to fix. But it's not articulated well that I could find in the plan. Now maybe it's there and I missed it, but that is something that we need to include in there. So the conclusions really, I feel that the plan is partially implemented. I do feel that much of the spirit of the plan was captured, but just not in the detailed level that we asked for. So I really see two jobs ahead. One is to take what they've got and make some edits and tweaks to make what they've got really tight. And then the other part of the work is to take the things that are not in there, that were called for in the plan, and get them in there. So the next steps, and the reason I agree with you about we don't want to go back and replan a plan that we haven't implemented yet. However, the caveat to that is that as per 272A, which is the state law that authorizes the town to have a comprehensive plan, it clearly lays out that the town has to identify when the plan should be reviewed and updated, and the plan then has to state when it gets reviewed and updated. So if you don't review the comprehensive plan, you are at risk, and I don't know how much of a risk, but you are going against the rule for having a comprehensive plan, which says it has to be updated. And in your case,
the plan stated it would be updated every 5 years. It doesn't have to be a long drawn-out plot process. It doesn't have to go back and reanalyze all of the things. But the way I looked at it is that there are new concerns. Someone, I think Deidre mentioned pipelines and solar and utility lines. There's a whole bunch of things that weren't on our radar when we did the plan. So let's just do a what if. Let's say we didn't review the plan, and you wrote a zoning law to address solar, pipelines, utility lines. I don't know, Deirdre, what else you had on your list that was a new one? Sustainability, climate change. So let's say you wrote a zoning law that specifically addressed those things. Your zoning law has to be, as per state law, has to be consistent with state law, with your comprehensive plan, I'm sorry. So someone could, if they wanted to, they could go and say, you're regulating pipelines. Show me in the comprehensive plan where it said to regulate pipelines. So part of the reason for even a small public review is to identify what those missing and new issues and trends are, and to ensure that we have the backup and the oomph in the plan to support those zoning changes later on. And again, in the spirit of involving the community, I don't think it's a bad thing to get the community back together, review the list of goals that are in the plan, and say, you know, has anything changed? Are these, you still feel good about these? That's what we do is in a review of a plan. We don't start from scratch, but we make sure it's on solid footing for you to move forward to, because there are instances where communities pass a zoning law that can't be basic. There's just no connection between it and its comprehensive plan, and that's a risk, that's a legal risk for someone to come and say, show me where. So I'm just trying to avoid that risk for you. Whatever you do, whether you do an update of the plan or not, my recommendation for moving forward to get the zoning up to where you want it to be is for the town board to give clear and specific direction about what things you want included in the comprehensive plan. My impression is that the ZIC interpreted the plan in their way instead of implementing what was on the page in the comprehensive plan. You have to give specific direction to whomever, whether it's a consultant, a committee, a board, I don't know, but you need to give specific direction about the tools you want to see implemented in the zoning. You should set a time frame so it doesn't go on for another 5 years. 6 months may be hard, this is a complex thing, but it certainly doesn't need to be 5 more years. You should set up the drafting and review process. Who's going to draft it? Who's going to review it? And I think one of the issues is, just from my experience, is that you can't write zoning by a committee. It's just too difficult to know all of the options and all of the ways of saying things. So it's easier, I think, for somebody to say, these are the tools, here's 5 pages of additions. It's easier to say, we don't agree with that, let's change it, than to start from scratch. So my advice is you identify the process that you want this done. Usually what I do is I get the scope of work, I get the plan, the list of things, I do the writing based on what I know about the town, I submit it to the board, a committee, whomever, and they start the review from there. So it's starting from a spot that is inclusive. It may shift down, you may reject certain things or change certain things, and that's fine, but it's a starting place instead of, you know, scrambling around trying to figure out, oh, how do we do this? And I also think that it's really important, given the desire of the community to be involved, that you, whether it's a subcommittee, a board, or a new committee that's formed to do this, that the town board specifically outline your expectations for reporting. a monthly report, a quarterly meeting where you come and tell us what you're doing, what you've done, a memo, a note on the web page, or all of the above. So that there's clear lines of communication so the community and all of the board knows where it's at, what's being done, how it's coming, and any issues or decisions that the board has to make along the way. It's really not a good thing to, and I've been there and I've made those mistakes, so I've learned. It's not a good thing to hand you guys a 100-page document where you have no idea where, why, or how those decisions were made and expect you to really clearly understand what was in it. So ongoing communication about where it's at, I think, is really critical to make it, in the end, work well for the community. And I think that I would not want you to go back to zero, or meaning your existing law, and start from scratch. There's no reason to do that. You start with the ZIC update, and I think there's clear direction of where tweaks and changes and additions can be made to that. So that was probably a repetition of what you kind of read in my memo, but I hope that was helpful to get everybody on the same page.
So let me ask you, do you envision the same process as what the steering committee went through for looking at new things and developing strategies and for new items, and then turning those strategies to you?
You mean for the comprehensive plan update?
Yeah.
No, I don't think we are looking for new strategies. What I'm looking for is something that validates in general that the vision and the goals and in general the strategies that the plan sets out are still important to you as a community. I would envision not a big committee structure with subcommittees and interviews and surveys, although, you know, one way to do it might be a survey. You know, we do online surveys all the time now. You could do a survey and say, here are the 10 goals that were included in our comprehensive plan. Do you agree with these still? And give people an opportunity to say, I'm concerned about solar, or I want to see something about climate change in there. And so then what would happen is, let's say we validate the direction of the plan, we validate that the strategies, that no one has real heartburn over the strategies, but there are 5 new topics that come up. So what I would envision then is we would, and that you would have to decide whether it would be the board or you want another committee, would take those 5 topics and just work on those 5 topics. And so you would do an amendment to your comprehensive plan. So there might be a 3-page addition saying this is how we're going to treat solar, this is what we want to see for climate change, this is what we want to see for pipelines or whatever. So not to redo the whole thing.
Can you give us an outline of just
You mean like
the process?
Sure. I did a little bit of that in the last page of the memo, but I could make that more detailed. Yeah. So, you know, oftentimes we do a workshop, like a facilitated workshop to get at this. But I don't think it's a bad idea either to have a survey, just because then then everybody has a chance to do it. So that could be developed. I think one of the choices you as a board have to make is, do you want to have a committee to oversee that, or do you want to just keep that and have that process as your own? You don't have to have a committee to update your comprehensive plan. You can keep that and do it on your own and just direct whatever is going to take place to be done. And then I would, given the passage of time and that we have, let's see, that was done in 2009. So we have a new census that has come out.
We have new building permit information that we could have. There are some things that we could look at just to make sure we're not missing some big, huge issue that has arisen that we don't know about. Those are easy numbers to come up these days with. There's, not, 5 days of work to get those things updated. I would envision just a small little appendix that would go with the update to it. But I can certainly outline what those steps could be.
Yeah, that'd be helpful. I don't know how you folks feel, but I'm inclined to think about using a committee.
A committee with totally citizens and no board members, and board members.
Whatever your choice.
So there's two ways.
The more input from more people, the better.
From a process point of view, you could look at it two ways. You can do it step by step. Step one, you do this shortened version of a review and an update of your plan. You take that and then you adopt it, you tie it up in all the bows, and then you do the zoning. So it's consistent with that. Or you could do them, I don't want to say simultaneously, but I think you clearly know what some of the needs are to get the zoning up to speed. You could do both at the same time and then make sure they mesh at the end. So, I'm just looking at ways not to make it an overbearing, multi-year process again.
And what would you do?
I guess I would, usually I recommend the safer way is do your plan and then do your zoning. But I agree that in this case, where you're partially implemented your plan, I guess I would say it would be simultaneous. That would be the most efficient way. That you have, if you as a board could establish the direction and a good process to get the zoning done, in that it included making sure that anything that came out of a comprehensive plan update was done, and then you wait, you don't adopt the zoning until the comprehensive plan is updated. Then you would have met that test. But that depends.
And what's easier for the planning board, zoning board, code enforcement officer, all that meshes together?
That really doesn't have anything to do with them at this point. The planning board implements what you ultimately adopt. Your role is to make policy. Their role is to administer whatever policies you as a board adopt. So they have input and they have experience in what works and what doesn't work in the zoning. But my opinion is the board needs to set the policy.
Okay. And after we're all finished, do you come back and do workshops?
You mean training?
For the planning and zoning?
Could. I often do. Yep, and yes. So that certainly could be something that's done. And in fact, I don't know if you have a town policy, maybe, 5 years ago now, maybe a little longer. The state passed a law that requires 4 hours of training for planning board, ZBA, and building inspector. So that you could weave that in as part of their requirement.
I think I lean very strongly towards, I think timeliness is of the essence, but I also think that, the community has invested too much in this over a long time not to have the true community involvement. So I think that we have to find that balance between what's efficient, but also making sure that there is that input. And I like what you were outlining, Nan, very much.
Well, I agree with what Lynn was saying. I think it's probably a practical and important way to go. I think, the board, I think we have to put some time into the whole issue of almost like a statement of what we're expecting, the time frame, the commitment that we think people would have to make to this in order to really accomplish it, in order to get it done, because it has to get, I mean, I think we're at a unique time to get it done. We need to take advantage of that. And we also have to kind of lay out the structure as a board to, you know, really help people to make that happen.
I'm open for a forming of a new committee and having that committee extend the work that the ZIC started without me. Let me get that right in there. I want to be able to stand back and throw the stones.
And you know, I don't want to ignore, I don't know your first name. Sue. Sue, sorry, I should know that. But the risk is, you know, whenever you have a planning process, you know, you open up new topics and old wounds and other viewpoints. That is a risk. There's no doubt that that is something that you know, you tear the Band-Aid off and reanalyze things that you have settled as a community. So I guess that's why it goes back to a very focused process for the review. We look at zoning or census changes or big trends that have come out. We revalidate the direction of the plan, and we identify issues that the community wants to see addressed. I mean, you know, other options or ideas that you have or the community has to improve on that would be great. But I would look at it as a very, not narrow to exclude people, but narrow to get the job done.
And what size committee, 5, 7?
Yeah, you don't want a committee more than that, otherwise they become dysfunctional.
Can I just throw in that it might give credibility to the whole process if some of the key people from the original comprehensive plan steering committee, who are so familiar with it and wrote it and worked with hundreds of people to create it, were a key part of this committee that you're thinking of putting together.
Let me get one thing clear. We're really talking about one committee with two jobs. One is this kind of limited review of the comprehensive plan. And then the same committee is going to deal with the zoning that grows out of the original plan and what has any additions that need. So it's really the same committee doing both jobs.
In the second part with professional help.
Yeah.
It's all right.
It has to be focused. It has to be time. I mean, it can't be open-ended. It's got to be, this can't go on forever. And the focus is review of the plan. You look at it and say, is this good? Yes, no. It's probably going to be yes. Move on. You know, do not focus on, well, you know, and start getting into making big changes, because once that happens, the can of worms has been opened, and that's not the intent. The intent should be look at it, see what needs updating, as in where are we now, and fixing it.
Yeah, and again, the main point is so that you're consistent with what you said you were going to do, 5-year review. And I don't want to leave you with a zoning law that someone's going to come back and say, how'd you get to this point?
Mm-hmm.
That's not what I would recommend. You could do it, but it's certainly, you know, I would follow your lead, but I would want to have you make sure you're all, you know, you're not self-creating holes there.
Do you think this should take place within 6 months?
Well, certainly the review and the update of the comprehensive plan, I think that could be definitely. The zoning, The only way the zoning is gonna get to that point, to be honest, is if you have someone who knows how to write the things that need to be written to give you the draft language. That's when then you take it and say, well, you know, we don't understand this, or we don't like this one, exit out, change it, but that's the only way. You have to have a document to start with that you then either accept or reject in some way. That's the only way it'll happen. And you know, every community is different. I work with Copake, they hope to do it in 6 months, then they hope to do it in 8 months, and then they changed the whole committee that they started with was a different committee at the end, and I think we were at it for 2.5 years. And that was with very involved, I was very involved. I was at every meeting, and they started with a document that I developed. And they went line by line, and literally some meetings we had discussions of one line. That is crazy.
Sounds familiar, Gene?
So that's why I mean that you really, you want it to be done right, but there's much more efficient ways of getting that done. You know, it might be better, this committee, when it has a draft, you send it to the planning board and you say, okay, planning board, read it and give us your comments in 30 days. Okay, ZBA, read it and give us your comments in 30 days. Or the environmental committee. And so you collect the comments and you then incorporate or change whatever needs to be changed.
You know, to what Bob mentioned about a concern of this new committee drifting, going sort of off the reservation. If you can mitigate that by carefully crafting a charge for the committee and be very, very specific.
Right.
That's our job.
That's your job. But, you know, to support the notion of why it's important to review the plan, I'd offer perhaps an analogy, which is that if you had a diagnosis 7 years ago, you wouldn't be going into surgery based on that diagnosis. You would want to revisit. And so I think it is important, I think it's critical that we spend the time. Things have changed, 7 years is a lifetime.
And at the same, on the other hand, this thing has taken 7 years because there are those who want it to fail. And I'm concerned about opening a door to that happening. So, you know, stalling another 7 years would be another way of doing that. So, as I said in my opening comments, you know, I'm all for the public getting together and championing what we have so far, and having the folks who wrote it do the review of it, and then bringing in a professional to help with the zoning, and then, you know, bringing it to everyone as a celebration of, my God, we finally got this done, and we're reinforcing the original values that everyone espoused, and we've added these others. And you've had some obvious communication with the public in between, whether it's a survey or through newspapers or website updates or whatever, but I fear of having another community conversation to see if, you know, to see if everyone's still on board with it.
Well, you know, here's building on that, here's another idea. What are the requirements to adopt an amendment to the comprehensive plan? You have to hold a public hearing, you have to do the environmental review on it, and it has to go to the county planning board. You as a board have the authority to update the plan. You could, just the 5 of you, say, here's the 5 new subjects that we feel have come up in the 7 years that we know of, and develop a policy statement for each one of those. It doesn't have to be very long and involved. Just make a statement that, you know, land use regulations should address solar or whatever it might say. You might have all of that information from what you know about the community now. You could develop that and hold a public hearing. That's the requirement. Hold a public hearing. You have to hold a public hearing. And so rather than go through and reopen up everything, you could develop that yourself and then just present it. Here's our proposed update to the comprehensive plan. It doesn't necessarily avoid that, but it doesn't open it up to this whole big potential. I don't know. You can, I don't know how to judge the risk.
If you proceeded that with the internet survey, which focused on these are the key elements in the plan. Is there anything that you don't like or anything that's missing? And set a response thing of 2 weeks. That way you've given people a chance, and then you can do it enlightened by that, have a public hearing, and then you're done.
What do you do with the folks who say, I don't like that? After 400 community members spent 3 years.
So if you have 3 people that say, I don't like it,
Well,
there's a
then-
lot of people. But what happens if you get 500 people who say, I don't like that? Do you really want to move ahead when there are 500 people? That boil is going to fester at some point anyway.
Yeah, that's
To not ask, I think puts you, if you don't ask and say, we're not interested.
No, I hear you.
Just the 5 of us are going to do it. I think you make yourself vulnerable. And you may get people upset who aren't upset at all. You never asked.
Judy?
Tanya, thanks for all your work. Well, I was going to say, supposing the original comprehensive plan had been passed, had been implemented in a timely manner, that is 5 years ago, or 6 years ago. We would be faced with this now. We would say, this is the reason for your saying that you have to have amendment sections and procedures for doing that. I mean, I'd like to think that that original comprehensive plan was pretty excellent, although the things that are lacking are things that happen over time because situations change, the environment changes. But I think all of us pretty much who worked on it agreed that it was a pretty good plan, and I agree with Dan that just those issues that have changed or have arisen since that time are the things that need to be looked at, and we shouldn't open the whole thing again and say, what do you think of this plan?
Oh, sorry. I just want to remind you, we have 2 things going on here. One is, we talked about updating the plan, and the second thing is repairing all the things that Nan came up with, a lovely comprehensive list of what we needed to relook at in the zoning. And I think it's really important that we start that also as soon as possible, even while we're implementing or reviewing the plan, because there's things in there that need a lot of work, and there's things that need just to be redone, and there's some things that really have to be researched. Just as I said on the ZIC, and some of the things that we had a good clue about, and some things we didn't. So I think that we have to start with that list as soon as possible to get going on that.
It's the end mesh.
Yeah.
Any other comments?
I have one more comment. We didn't budget for this, mind you. This was not budgeted last year. So, you know, the accountants, new accountants have worked through our budget, and we will find out where we are, probably not till May. Where they give a good presentation. Right now they're very busy with tax season. So, and they just finished the requirements for the state. So, we're not quite sure.
It'll be 6 months. So we're almost into 17.
I know.
Have you contacted the Mark Castiglione from Hudson Valley Greenway? Because they are the only group around here that they give grants for comprehensive plan updates. Like the Village of Kinderhook is updating their comprehensive plan with a grant from the Greenway. So, and I don't know if they have specific times of the year that you can apply or if it's a rolling application, but it's worth giving them a call and asking them, because that might be very helpful. And I think they funded the Village of Kinderhook. They've done 2 updates since their original plan, and I think the Greenway funded all of them.
They also funded the ag plan.
They like Kinderhook, obviously.
Oh, I have another one for you. Talk to, I'll get you his name, you can talk to Dave Boehm at Ag and Markets. Ag and Markets, because you have an Ag Environment Protection Plan. Ag and Markets gives, I want to say it was either $10,000 or $15,000 to towns to implement zoning changes
in their, that have been identified in their ag and farmland protection plan. So that is definitely a stone to look under. And again, I don't know if it's rolling or if there's certain times of the year that you can apply, but that is definitely something you should look at. And you can wrap a lot of this up as needing to make the zoning farm friendly.
Their budget was just passed, so they should
Yeah, I would
have money.
call them right away. Yeah. 'Cause they're actually looking for communities who will take advantage of that grant.
We will hear.
I wanted a clarification, Ann. Is it possible that we can do this in terms of the organization that the board gives the committee? That we can also do it, picking up on what Jean said, that we can do it by piece. So the pieces that are relatively easy, we can go from putting them out there, getting them done with, and then actually doing any resolutions that need to be done. So that we're not in the situation of not accomplishing any pieces until however long this thing is going to take, and that we can divide it in terms of what's a doable job for the next period of time. What takes, but what, you know, and when we're giving the charge of the committee, we take that into account. It can be done that way, true?
Yes, it can be, and that might be a strategy. The town of Ancrum, you're talking about the zoning changes.
The zoning changes.
The town of Ancrum is an example. They did theirs in pieces. They did like the definitions and the purposes, got them all done, and then adopted that as a local law, updated their zoning, then they went on to do the next section. So they did probably 4 or 5 processes, each one with a public hearing and with the seeker and the county planning board review, and then at the end, they put it all back together again. And there is, you know, there's good and bad to that. The good is that it's easier for the community to digest in pieces. The bad is that that zoning has to work together. So sometimes you have to go back and change something. And also that on your part, it's every time you do an amendment to the law, you have to go through the same legal process. So it's more work to do that. But yes, then you could at least show pieces. It could be done if you wanted to.
But you're asking if the committee could start working on this now,
Yeah.
even without funds to
Yeah, I mean,
plug the easy holes
Yeah.
that seem to make sense now.
right.
And then when the money comes through, get some
Yeah, a few
professional
things that
support for the
we
hard
can start getting done.
Yeah.
The hybrid version of what Nan just described to you is that the board gives the working committee a charge, as everybody said, very specific, but it includes a timeline. And the timeline is, first you will address these issues and you will report them out to the board for its consideration. And as each of those deliverables comes into the board can sit on them and then move on them in the aggregate and not have to go through the process that Dan was describing 5 times, but rather once.
Right.
But once the committee reports it out to the board,
You've actually completed the job.
that deliverable is completed. Correct. And if you, as the board, give the committee the charge, in 3 weeks, give us sections 1, 2, and 3. In the following 3 weeks, gives us sections 4, 5, and 6.
Right.
And at that point, we'll have another town board meeting. We'll put it on the agenda for discussion with the community, and you roll it along into your regular business as well. So you don't have to have special meeting after special meeting. You might have extra long town board meetings because you set aside an extra 45 minutes for that review, but you get the public participation on a rolling basis.
Sure. That, well said.
I'd like to make a suggestion that someone from the board, maybe Bob Balcom, would be representative of the board on this new committee.
I can't run from this.
And
Why is that? You're in the corner?
I've
Nobody's
been-
going to the
I've been-
table.
I've been involved in this from day one.
and that we ask the public to submit their names, and within the next 10 to 12 days, no, let's see, maybe 15 days before our April 21st meeting, so that we can choose people to be on that committee and announce the committee at our next meeting.
On what basis will you choose them? What criteria should they be looking at to see if they should self-nominate?
If they feel that you would like to serve on the committee, it's going to be a long process, you know, a number of months.
I'd suggest that you could do that and have a couple members from the general public that want to be on that. But I think the bulk of the committee should be people who are so familiar with this plan and worked so hard on it.
And understand zoning.
And understand zoning, and have been through this all, and I would suggest
But
the
they
town
have to
board.
be, but they have to have the desire to serve.
Well, sure, but the town board could approach them and ask them to serve on this committee because
Well,
of
we
their,
want it to be an open situation.
and then advertise for 2 slots of the general public to be part of this committee. Then you have town board and the original steering committee, key people. And then you have the general public coming in who may or may not have even read it before and have got a steep learning curve. I don't think you want a whole committee. Bob, do you want a whole committee of people who've never
No,
read
I
it?
I know who I would select, don't worry.
This goes to the problem of the original ZIP. It had no institutional memory. You cannot expect anybody to function on this comprehensive plan without that institutional memory. So I think, I think that Sue is right on.
Can I add to that, and I think for those of you who work with me, you'll know that I'm always honest, and I'll be really honest. And this, I don't say this to insult anybody, but a lot of times the problem with any of these procedures are the person with the biggest, I want to be on it, is actually an anti-zoning and anti-planning person, and they'll grind it to a halt because they don't even agree with what you're trying to do. The people who serve on this committee need to have a feeling that zoning is something good for the community and that the comprehensive plan is good for the community. If you appoint someone who doesn't have that perspective, it makes it impossible to get the job done. It really does.
And advertising to populate the whole committee with folks who self-nominate from the outside based on no criteria of how you choose them, and then they don't get chosen, can make a big deal out of that this is an inside deal and this is, which would never have been an argument had you not gone through that public announcement for members. I'm always thinking worst case scenarios, I'm sure you are too.
Yeah, that was.
What are your thoughts, board, on choosing of the committee?
I got 2 people in this room right now I got my eye on.
I think it has to be people who have been intimately involved. I think it should, I'm a little uncomfortable with just putting it out as if maybe 1 or 2 people from the general community, but then we would need to have criteria that would be clear enough that if somebody's turned down, they're not going to, be a problem.
I just think on the heels of the whole appointment to your boards that, it's ripe for another round of
The board does appoint committees without that. We're having
That's what we elected
basically
you
a
to do.
discussion here tonight, a very good discussion.
Well, I think the
with-
people who are most interested are here
And
tonight.
so I really don't see a huge problem with the board just appointed. I like the idea of opening things up, but it can open worms as well.
Don't forget, we were highly criticized for doing exactly what you're saying you want to do right now. Not all of us on this board, but 3 of us agreed to a committee, and that committee was formed. And like the public said, there wasn't much input from the public on the original committee.
after a while, that committee had changes made to it. We advertised and advertised all the time for looking for members. We had a hard time getting members to come forward. Even though the public is saying that they were not available, they didn't step up to sit on that committee either, including certain people sitting in this room that never put their name up to sit on that committee. How many openings did we have over how many years? And we interviewed people. And our big key to that interview was what Dan spoke to, that we made sure the people got on it did not have an agenda. We had them come on that committee with an open mind to just sort of go through that document the way we did. I'm not saying whether we did miss things or didn't miss things or how it was left, but we did what we thought was right at the time. I'm looking forward to the new committee working on it, but the public was very stringent and spoke highly of wanting to have input on this committee. I think it's a bad thing to do at this point in having us pick that committee after the public has been so vocal and not wanting us to do that.
But you're speaking apples and oranges, because having people who were on the steering committee that worked with 400 people.
I'm not opposed to them being on the committee.
Let me finish. That had that credibility and that public face throughout that whole comprehensive plan committee or process. It is not the same as what you're talking about with the original ZIC. These people have credibility, they've got knowledge, they can hit the ground running, they've got, they're known, their names are on the comprehensive plan. If anyone is available or qualified to go look at it and begin updating, it's these people. I don't know why you would pass up the opportunity for that kind of talent.
I'm not. We had Don Hagman sat on that committee the whole time. Gene sat on that committee the whole time. There was ample opportunities for any one of those members of that steering committee over the years to come on to that ZIC committee. They never did. They never even submitted.
Yes, there's more than one reason for that, but that's a different issue. This is an issue of, we have a comprehensive plan that was approved by the town board, that was produced by a committee in conjunction with 400 citizens. Now, the people who did that come back, they look at it, engage the public on the new issues. It's not going to be done in a vacuum. It's just that you're not going to have folks who are not familiar with it or the history or the context having to climb a steep learning curve and perhaps foment some resentment because they're not really up to speed on what needs to be done.
I think Bob Leary.
Yeah. I just want to make one short comment. I know Bob Malcolm has been good enough to take this. Why can't we leave it up to Bob to decide who we might want on this committee? He's not going to pick. He's going to pick people who have worked in it from day one, probably. And to make the job easier, it's been going on long enough now that Bob appoint the committee. What's wrong with that? I see nothing wrong with it.
Or task Bob with reviewing the plan, and then Bob decides to ask a few people to help.
Well, that's the point that I want to bring up. I mean, there's a million ways to skin the cat here. I mean, you don't need a committee. There's no legal requirement to have a committee. You guys could you have to review all of these things to adopt it before you adopt the law anyway. You could not have a committee and orchestrate this on your own. I don't know if that alleviates this committee issue to say that you're going to do it. I don't know.
My theory is I think it's important to have public input in the committee stage.
I think the committee, how the committee conducts what it does is important. So, it could be just a 3 people, really, myself and a couple others, go through the plan and then put it out there, put it into the board, put it on the website, and we have another workshop and, and discuss it, invite people. At that point, if we want to do a survey, we can, work with Dan on creating a survey. But the key to it, though, is to make sure the public knows what's going on. That's all. And then take comment.
Can I just say, my inclination is not to open avenues of dissent and disincentive and slowing down the whole process once again. But on the other hand, I think it'd be a mistake to just predetermine that you want only people with experience in the process. Personally, for all we know, Nan has moved to town, or someone just like her, who we could really take advantage of in this process. So I do think that opening up and asking for people to submit, self-submit, those of us, Sue, who served on the committee way back in the day, should play that up in our applications, but I think the board should at least get the opportunity to see what other expertise have moved into the community since that. It's been 5 years. You would essentially saying, if you moved here in the last 5 years, we really don't want your input on this.
No, that's,
With that approach.
no, that's not, we're talking about reviewing the comprehensive plan in terms of, I mean, that's the phase one, that's the one road. The zoning stuff is different, the new issues are different, they'll call for different processes, different professional assistance, different public involvement. But just to sit down and review the plan, you guys could crack open a couple beers and get it done in the afternoon.
That's my feeling.
But then you start, but that's what I asked before, because now you're really talking about, now you're talking about two
Sue,
committees.
where's the voice that says climate change? Because I'll be honest with you, if you'd said to me, and I did a lot of this professionally, if you'd said to me, are you missing anything in this plan? I might not have thought of climate change. That's me, because I think of it globally.
No, but the whole amendment process and those new issues is a whole separate deal. That's not part of what we're talking about here.
You're talking about...
This is just looking at the existing plan,
Review of what we got.
just reviewing what they've got.
See if
And
it's
then new issues that have been brought up that Deidre outlined, that's a whole separate process. The zoning and filling in the gaps,
No,
that's...
I think you're mistaken.
Well, and then...
Well, that's why you get a clear charge, right, Michael?
I think we're arguing over the shape of the table here. There's wisdom in, obviously, in institutional memory, and I think it would be foolish to stack the committee full of people who have no background in this. But equally, and I don't mean to start something here, but people get invested as well. And so fresh eyes, people who don't have the emotional and the time investment, as Rick said, there are plenty of talented people who may not have been involved in the first round. And at the end of the day, this is the equivalent. We're not reinventing the wheel. This is a project that should have been finished years ago. We are just reviewing, reassessing the plan as if, I should think the committee, to function properly, would just assume that this had already been implemented. Just take that point of view, that here's this comprehensive plan, it was complete. Now we're looking at it 5 years later. What would we do to improve it? Not how are we going to change it wholesale. What would we do to improve it?
That's a good way of putting it.
Right, because even if, like you're right, even if you had passed a new zoning law 1 year after the plan was adopted, you would still be facing a 5-year review in how you want to accomplish that, which then could result in further zoning changes.
We had enough?
I think so. We still have a little business to do after Dan's finished. So, I still feel that we need at least 5 people. I think 3 is too small.
Oh, I was just saying that because I've got 2 people in this room plus myself already, so.
And I think we do want to hear from the public as far as if they have the time and the desire to work on this committee and finish this job. And at the next meeting, we will put together a committee. Is that something we can all agree on?
Okay, copy of the plan.
Yeah, you have
I emailed it to
I
you.
got a flash drive.
Oh, okay, I don't download it.
I'm sorry. What?
I won't download it here.
Oh.
So I'll just, like I said, I sent you an email, you can just.
Yep. I did bring, I forgot to give you, I do have, just, I guess it was a little too late, but I did have paper copies of that. But I email. You can put it on the website, absolutely. Yep. Henry, do you want it as a PDF or as a PowerPoint?
PDF would be fine.
Okay.
Thank you.
It's hard to believe people make a leave.
Yes, it is.
If you're leaving the meeting, please, quietly. We still have business to conduct. Thank you very much. And thank you all for coming. Okay, we have a few resolutions. One is for our What that is to accept the proposal for engineering to provide professional services in the traffic design of the road in New York State Route 295 intersection to complete the work for a not-to-exceed budget of $50,000 on a time and materials basis in accordance with their original billing rates and authorize the town supervisor to sign the authorization letter.
Second.
Any discussion?
Yes. What, you said not to exceed 15,000, what are they actually going to do for us?
Sorry, I can't hear you.
What are they actually going to do? We already spent money for them to design.
Close the doors.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah.
It's a letter of engagement.
Right, I want to know what we're engaging in. I mean, we already had them design that intersection and the changes there. What's the new proposal for?
It's right here, but there's more work to be done as far as the engineering for that whole intersection. And we're still going to have a public hearing and presentation by Tom after he gets all of his analysis and reports done from the DOT. So there's a whole checklist.
I thought we did a lot of this. That's why I'm just curious to why we're spending up to another 15,000 on it. Up to, right, but I mean,
I don't know.
there was a traffic study done there was a lot of this stuff was already done, so I'm just curious to why we're doing it again.
It's not completed for what they have to do and comply with.
What did we pay?
With DOT.
When they came and presented it in East Chatham last year, and he had worked on it, what did we pay for that?
It was, I think it was $5,000. And he did that presentation at the East Chatham Firehouse. That's the one I'm thinking too. And a lot of things that were here were mentioned in that same context. So I'm just kind of curious to why we're going to pay again for something.
I ran this through town, and he was okay with it.
I'm just asking some questions. I'd like some answers rather than just you ran it through somebody. I mean, we already said we don't have a lot of money. Do we have, is this money budget?
I did that last week.
Well, this is a separate project that we're going to have the bond. We're going to take a bond in on the whole project.
Including up to the 15,000 here and the project, the work itself being done, that's all been included in the bond?
This
So
piece will be in the bond. This piece will be in the bond. This up
Yeah.
to 15,000.
So then we're approving this to be done, but without the exception that we have the bond, we don't even put in for the bond. We don't know if we'll
We
be.
haven't done that yet, right, Cal's working on that.
Okay. I just think we're going about this is wrong. I'm just not sure. I mean, we already know we don't have this money in the budget, but we're going to approve this tonight to spend up to
Well, it's
15,000
not-
that we don't have.
The light and the project in East Chatham wasn't part of the budget.
Right, I understand that.
So-
But you're saying now that we're going to pass a resolution that we're going to spend up to $15,000 to have this done. We don't have the money to do that. That's what I'm getting at. You're saying it's
Until
going
we
to
have the bond.
until we have the bond.
Right.
So if we don't get the
So we can
bond,
work out, well,
if we don't get the bond, we're not gonna move forward with this.
if we don't get the bond, then we can't do the project.
Okay? What happened to $100,000 that was coming
That will
from
come
Kathy
to us if we
Marchandler?
do the project.
Yeah, we don't get that unless we do the project.
Okay.
But
But isn't
our
that
accountant
money's,
suggested that we do a bond for the whole project.
and at one point, that whole project was, the number I would read was $180,000.
Right.
That we were looking, that Kathy's office is giving us $100,000, and the town was gonna have to come up with another $80,000 to make the project complete.
And we are gonna go and petition CSX for participation.
Good luck with that. But, all right, so as long as I'm understanding that this money that we're agreeing to, if it's not, it's gonna be covered in the bond. That's where the money's coming from. It's not gonna be coming out of our budget. I wanna be clear about that.
That's what I understand.
So can that be clear in the resolution?
Yeah, sure.
I think it needs to, because we don't have the money to do this.
Well, why don't I hold it, we'll bring it back, table it, we'll bring it back for
That-
the
that-
April
that-
21st meeting.
Do you understand where I'm coming from?
That's fine.
I think that Barton and LaJuice know that we're only taking this on if, you know, they're taking whatever risk they think there is. I don't think there's much risk, but I can't imagine why we wouldn't get a bond.
Yeah, but it still needs to be.
But nonetheless, they should understand.
Right, the reason I'm bringing up the bond issue is last year when we were talking about this, the previous accountant made it sound like we were right to our limit to what we could get bonds for, because we had so many other bonds out there that we hadn't even started paying on. So I want to make sure that the accountant says that we're solid enough that we can go out and take another bond on.
Yeah.
Because of the money that we had for the town highway equipment there for a while and some other projects that we took on.
Yeah, we have no debt service.
Debt-free.
We have no debt service.
No bonds.
But
There's no.
it doesn't hurt to have the accountant tell us that, right?
Yeah, because I mean, that means if there's no bonds, that means our highway department thing was all paid for already, there's none of that's out there. Wasn't there money also for the bridge on White Mills Road, wasn't that part of a bond issue also? I guess we're guessing, so
It's all paid.
if we go to the accountant and the accountant tells me that we're good, we're not gonna have an issue with this, I'm not gonna have an issue with it either.
I'd like to move that we table.
Yeah.
It's just the information I had doesn't coincide with what's in front of us now, that's all. All right, I'm fine.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Any discussion on the table?
Can we discuss the table?
Well,
All in favor?
if it's voted.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, let's bring it back, I'll find out and bring it back on the 21st. Okay, next one. This is a resolution to renew the electric agreement with Viridian Energy for 12 months. I'd like a motion and a second. This is the company that we have that special arrangement with for
Have
the
they saved us
electric
money?
service, and we get a better rate with them. We've been with them for, I guess, 3 or 4 years. This comes from Chatham.
I move.
Second.
Any discussion?
No?
All in favor?
Keep consistent.
Aye. Opposed?
Aye.
We had it next year.
Yeah, that's one to look at, actually.
Okay. Next resolution is to authorize members of the Planning Board and the Zoning Board of Appeals to attend the New York Planning Federation Conference, April 17 to 19, at a cost of $189 per person. The attendees right now are Jeff Lick, Gabrielle Sperry, Candace Eaton, and Mitch Hosroga. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
I just have a question before I.
Discussion?
Yeah, the discussion is, do they choose a group or do they decide?
They all need
I know they need.
education,
So,
and they have the option of going to whatever classes.
And this is
they want
one of several they can choose during.
throughout the year.
Okay.
Correct. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. I also want to mention, with regard to that conference, that Dave Everett is being honored with the Ali Award, which is for, Ali was a former leader of the Cornell local governance program. And that award is given out to an outstanding zoning board of appeals chairman each year. And Dave is receiving that. Dave is going to the conference also, but his company is picking up the tab.
That's a pretty remarkable award right there.
Yeah.
There's a lot of ZBA chairs.
Well, Mitch, I believe, nominated him. It's a nice compliment for our CBA chairman. Next resolution is to authorize the town supervisor to attend the New York Association of Towns and the Office of the State Controller's 16th Annual Town Finance School, May 12 and 13 in Saratoga at a cost not to exceed $500.
So moved.
Second.
Discussion?
Are we bonding that expense? I'm sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And the last one is a resolution to authorize the code enforcement officer and building inspector to obtain a mobile telephone and mobile telephone service to be paid by the town of Chatham for use only on town business. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, that concludes our meeting. Anyone else have anything else to discuss?
Motion to adjourn. How's that?
Do I have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.